Hello everybody, and welcome back. Initially, I wanted to make a video about the new USN light cruisers, but then they came out with information about the Stalingrad, and since the USN light cruisers kind of just look like British Royal Navy light cruisers with HE and no smoke, I figured I will save that for another video. So let's talk about Stalingrad. Yes, COMRADE. This ship is... this ship is, quite insane, if that's the right word, to be a cruiser, comrades. Yes, first things first, 84,000 hit points, and if that wasn't enough, take a look at the plating. That's right, this is a cruiser with 32 millimeters of plating. 32 millimeters! And if historical documentation is to be believed, this ship is also going to have a middle deck section that is going to be 50 millimeters. Which means, yes, for those of you who are quickly thinking it through, she is going to auto-bounce pretty much every single battleship on her bow, except for Yamato and Musashi, and her middle deck section is going to auto-bounce Yamato and Musashi shells as well. Top Keck. So huge HP pool, battleship level armor, but is cruiser, comrades. Okay, let's move on. Main battery armament is 3. I still can't. Okay. 305 millimeter guns in 3 triple turrets. A maximum firing range of 20.4 kilometers. Maximum AP shell damage 9,200. So those are all pretty much expected numbers, I would say, for a ship like this. Reload time is a nice and quick 20 seconds. Now, of course, if you throw on the reload module and you get a bit of adrenaline rush, you can knock that number down quite a bit. So this ship is going to be, in terms of a main armament, kind of like the Scharnhorst, I would say. So if you're a cruiser and you run into this kind of thing, I mean, yes, you can auto-bounce some of the shells and it doesn't have the overmatch. But again, if you show broadside, or even a bit of that broadside, be ready for a world of pain. 180-degree turret traverse time is pretty speedy, 40 seconds. Maximum dispersion, 219 meters, which, by the way, is the same horizontal dispersion you will see on the Japanese battleships. AP initial velocity, 950 meters a second, sigma value 1.8. Only major thing I would say is a little bit concerning about this is with most, sort of battleships that have the high velocity guns, vertical dispersion might be a bit iffy. So you might have shells that have a tendency of going short or long, kind of like the way that Roma has that problem. But again, her horizontal dispersion is better. So yeah, no slouch there. Now, somebody's going to probably mention that it looks like there is no HE shells. And, if there's no HE shells, how do you deal with the angle targets? Well, okay, I mean, we're not 100% sure on that. Maybe it was forgotten, maybe there is HE, but they just forgot to list it. Or, alternatively, if she is actually going to be an AP-only ship, then there's some very interesting things to consider, because they tried this with the British light cruisers, and AP only made it very, very challenging for those ships to get balanced. So they end up giving those ships superior auto bounce angles. So if Stalingrad ends up with AP only, don't be surprised to see improved auto bounce angles, which would make this ship really scary, because if you're a cruiser and you're depending on the auto bounce, then this ship can screw you if you make the smallest mistake there. Whew, watch out. Danger, danger there, for sure. Alright, also sigma value 1.8. Yes, I know cruisers have higher sigma values, 2.05 usually by tier 10. 1.8 is not as good as that, but again, sigma value is not the entire story when it comes to dispersion, and 1.8 is going to be okay. Let's talk about AA, because you think this huge ship, maybe AA is going to be the weakness. And if you take a look at her sort of close range AA, and you're like, okay, well, the 25mm guns, alright, the damage is not that great. And then you look at like the 45mm guns, okay, they're alright, right? But the thing you gotta look at is the large caliber, the 130mm. 5.7 kilometer base range, 167 DPS. That is a scary, scary number. To put things into perspective, Kutuzov, 117 DPS on its large caliber AA. And Kutuzov is still a threat even if you're a tier 9 or tier 10 carrier, especially when it pops its defensive fire, and guess what? Stalingrad has defensive fire. This thing is going to be scary for carriers, and they're probably not going to want to approach her. Very quick way to lose a lot of your aircraft. Moving on, let's take a look at the ship's maneuverability stats. Maximum speed, 35 knots. She is indeed cruiser, comrade. Very fast. With a speed flag, this ship can really get places, right? Now, some people might say, but look, her turning circle radius is awful. 1,130 meters is not a pretty number, right? There's some battleships in the game that are more agile than her. Yeah, until you realize that Moskva, which is the other tier 10 Russian cruiser, its turning radius is like 1,060 meters or something. And no, don't trust the port number on that. It's not true, because if you were actually to take Moskva, take another ship which has the same listed turning radius, take him into a training room and make him start turning at the same point, you'll notice that the other ship turns inside the Moskva very, very easily. So if you then think about it, Moskva at 1,060 and Stalingrad at 1,130, the difference is not that big anymore. Still, it is a weakness, right? And finally the ship has some kind of weakness. Surface detectability, 18.2. Okay, that's not great. It's a little bit less stealthy than the Moskva, but again, with her armor profile, if she angles correctly, she can hold down those strategic points and make it very, very hard for other ships to come in and dislodge her. If you sort of think about it from clan battles or from like maybe a random perspective, Moskva, for example, it is able to hold down certain positions, and by being in a certain position, it causes the enemy to behave a certain kind of way to react to that ship, right? Whether it is trying to angle a certain way, or if it's trying to maybe send ships in different directions so they don't come under sustained fire from a kind of ship like that. Stalingrad is going to do something I think pretty similar. Just get to a strategic point, make it very, very hard to dislodge a ship like this, because think about it, Moskva at least is vulnerable to battleship armor piercing on her bows. Stalingrad will not be. At all. Period. The end. You know, this is a ship that is only going to be really vulnerable to HE, and even then, she is cruiser, yes? So, if she has a cruiser damage control party, and she has the cruiser fire timers, you're not gonna be able to quickly take the ship down. And as long as she's able to stay at her position, with the way that her guns are, she is a threat to, hell, not just cruisers, but she is a threat to battleships as well. Her shells are going to hurt. They are going to potentially be able to sit it if a battleship decides to turn out. This ship is not a joke. This, like, make no mistake about it, this is going to be one really strong ship. And on top of that, you know, in terms of HE spam as well, usually you want ships with nice big superstructures to hit. Well, if you take a look at Stalingrad, you'll notice that her actual superstructure is really, really narrow. So I don't think her superstructure is going to be that easy to hit to get those, you know, nice damaging HE hits. So, you know, HE being the solution to the ship, not really. I think she's going to be able to survive quite a long time. And it's just going to make life very, very difficult. Because on top of, by the way, this, if you think about this in like random battles, right? She's going to have a sort of a similar situation as like the Musashi. Musashi is essentially a tier 10 battleship. Weak against aircraft and CVs, but not a lot of aircraft and CVs around. And for a ship that is at like, let's say, tier 9, you know, another sort of the tech tree ships or whatever, if you run up against Musashi, it's a very annoying target. It's a very annoying target. Why? Because here's a ship that has substantial levels of firepower, can really, really hurt you, and if it's angled, there's very little you can do. You've got to try to relocate, find a different position, and you've almost got to play around the Musashi. Like, the Musashi holds a point, and you kind of got to play around it a little bit in order to get rid of it. Stalingrad is going to create, I think, similar problems for teams, because suddenly you're going to have something that's essentially a cruiser. Like, I still am not going to ever get that out of the way. Here you have something that's a cruiser that, oh man, that is really going to be a battleship. So imagine you have a team, like let's say your standard team, where let's say you have like 4 battleships and you have 4 cruisers, for example, and your cruisers are all the regular like tier 10 tech tree ones, and suddenly the enemy team comes in with like a division of 3 Stalingrads. I mean, that pretty much just like the enemy team has just gone up to like 7 battleships, and your life has just become a hell of a lot harder, because not only do these ships have really good ways of messing up cruisers, they're very, very bulky, they're very, very durable, and it's going to make life very challenging. So, I mean, yes, right now, obviously, the ships are still subject to change, so potentially we see this change stuff happening. Personally, I mean, if they keep the 32mm plating, I would say drop the HP down. Maybe make it sort of follows the Kronstadt model. Drop her down to maybe like 60-something thousand HP. Again, be nice to figure out if she has AP, the special kind of AP, or if it's like, you know, she's got HE as well. That would be nice to know. And also, again, another question is like, is this the only consumables that she's going to have, or is she actually going to end up with something like radar? Now, if she doesn't have radar, and they sort of stick her the way she is right now, you know, they stick with it, and she doesn't get radar, I'm okay with that, because then one would almost say, okay, well, Moskva then still has a purpose, because Moskva has radar. But if they decide to give the ship radar as well, I really start to wonder what the hell the point of the Moskva is going to be, because here's a ship that is pretty much going to be better than you in, like, every single way. With, again, the potential, does she have HE? Maybe, maybe not. Does her AP have improved auto bounce angles? Maybe, maybe not. We don't know. So those are going to be some questions that, of course, need to be answered in the upcoming little while. Anyways, we will see where the development of Stalingrad goes. Hopefully she kind of is her own sort of special thing, but not like really crazy overpowered, you know, kind of, if you were to choose between her and Moskva, there'd be actually a choice. There'd actually be a reason to take one over the other, or vice versa. So hopefully they get things right. But for now, the way she looks like, this is one really, really strong ship. Anyways, folks, let me know what you think about Stalingrad in the comment section below. Otherwise, take care, have yourselves a really good Sunday, and I will talk to all of you again soon.